Brexis.
Here we are, my good friends. My good friends meaning you and I, since we're the only people that are going to watch this. Here we are once again, now with part 2 of the history in the making alien breakdown, focusing on our 3 main groups at this point, with appropriate anecdotes and asides relevant to the various plot levels in play. And in our first session, we covered a lot of good aspects, I think. I covered a lot of good aspects, anyway, about the general UFO phenomenon and the connection of the dwarves and stuff. And I really didn't talk about aliens, per se, at all. Just the type of interactions we have with these dwarves, and also the types of mental readjustments that are resulting from such encounters. So, to talk more about the aliens, per se, we have to assume, and there's no reason not to, that the whole breakdown of the beings of light, beings of darkness, angels and demons, God the Father messengers versus, dark, warlike, chaotic messengers, that these primal forces really do represent 2 opposing viewpoints, essentially, of the wider cosmos in which we find ourselves. In other words, the principles of light and dark, order and chaos, they are the primary dichotomy that rules, and we are subject to the puppeteers of those 2 opposing forces. One set of puppeteers are the forces of light, order, etc. The other are the dark, shadows, chaos. And, of course, now, nothing meant to be sacrilegious or necessarily overtly controversial about this, but this implies, and this has been my experience, that the messengers like that visit Muhammad in the cave, or that impregnate the Virgin Mary, or that lead the Israelites through the desert, or that speak to Akhenaten in his mystical reverie, that these are actually beings of light. You see things like the Essenes, for example. The Essenes were the apocalyptic Jewish sect right around the time of John the Baptist. John the Baptist was one of them, and they had supposedly these rituals they would conduct, and these beings of light would appear right in the middle of their sacred pools and have interactions with the elect of the community. And they record these interactions with the so-called Sons of Light, who were preparing them, it was said, for the battle with the so-called Sons of Darkness. And so you see also now a commonality between all these religions that, of course, includes by default angels. In other words, the Quran, the Jews, and the Christians all use the same angels, supposedly. So it's not really that large a step then to say, well, okay, they all admit and they all obviously are in contact with these angelic beings, and these angelic beings of light appear in all other mythologies, and they're always doing the same thing, always playing the same role. So they must be the same characters in some sense. Now the problem then becomes, if you start talking about it in the alien context, sometimes people get kind of weird about that, and it seems disrespectful, but remember that the alien beings, the Orion beings of light, in their interactions with humanity are limited to a guide level. They're guiding us, saving us in divine intervention necessity scenarios, but really just overtly playing the role of guides. And the responsibility ultimately is ours, because if the angels of, let's say, Judaism, if they are actually beings of light, alien beings, who are representing forces of order, then the job that they have in being assigned to us is to stimulate a higher level ordered perception in our consciousness, i.e., the monotheistic God, the Father, that they, in the plot level of the religion, are the messengers of. But in fact, you see, they are the messengers of God, but only because by interacting with us, they make us create God. Now that's controversial, okay? Shockingly declaring that God is created. God, in terms of the typical higher consciousness Father that rules the afterlife of believers, is actually created by default, or unfolded, let's say. It exists as a potential program. Let's say Allah, for example, existed as a potential program written into the big program, the software of the unconscious, but wasn't downloaded until the being of light, aka Gabriel, stimulates Muhammad to look in that area of the program. Therefore, it becomes unfolded, and Allah and all of that is what it is. The view of God that evolves right as the age of Pisces begins to turn over and defines that whole end of the cycle, etc. So, the different gods that appear, we got to remember in the program, they appear at certain times because they're needed to move the collective organism forward according to the 26,000-year plot. So these beings of light, if they are, for example, impregnating the Virgin Mary, or appearing to Muhammad in the cave, or intervening in battles for their chosen heroes during the Age of Heroes in Greece, whatever, they really are political puppeteers, and they are serving the forces of order and helping to create the higher level order, because that's their job. They want to. It's almost like this. This is exactly how it is. Humanity is up for grabs, let's say, between these cosmic forces of light and cosmic forces of darkness, and both are trying to tempt us and get us to vote for their side and give over our souls and follow them as if they are the ones. We have to choose between them, essentially. Also, however, there's the third option. Now, that is represented in all the alien mythology, and particularly in the occult mythology, by the Sirius connection. And the idea with that is, it's not the Father Order or the Dark Father chaos, right? Instead, it's a third option. And it represents an option that is connected to the goddess's overall plan, which is a balanced approach. Which is why the end of the whole 26,000-year cycle is marked by the theme of the battle of the two suns, the good and bad sun, and whether they're good or bad is depending on which side of the suns you're on. And so that, in other words, what we see there is the human script enacting a lesson about the ambiguity and relativism of all opposites through the war of the sons of the Father. This is an aside that actually relates to Queen Rania, you see. When the whole apocalypse woman of the apocalypse, woman of the resolution of the opposites. And so, anyway, that's an aside about the relativism of the two opposing forces and how humanity ultimately really shouldn't choose one or the other. And that's what the Sirius aliens are trying to tell us, because they're five-dimensional. You see, whereas both the beings of light from Orion and the beings of darkness, who are from Draco, and who are, let's say, allied with aliens from Draco, both of those are four-dimensional creatures. Okay? Four-dimensional beings of light, four-dimensional beings of chaos and dark. Whereas the Sirius aliens are five-dimensional, and that's why they are able to see beyond the opposites, and they are the real helpers of humanity. They are the ones that Isis has somehow chosen in her alliance, which is why Sirius is represented by Isis in the mythology. In other words, in the Great Pyramid, as we'll see, there are the star shafts, and they connect or target different stars. In the King's Chamber, it's Orion on one side, Draco on the other. In other words, the star shaft targets the king with Orion, because the king's power comes from the allegiance that the kingly royalty has with these beings of light historically. And the opposing forces of the negative chaos are therefore subjugated, and he's directing his will against them through the other shaft. But underneath him is the Queen's Chamber, and in the star shaft there, it's aligned to Sirius. And the arrangement of Sirius with Isis is very key in terms of representing that third option, the third way. But now, talking about the beings of light, just to give a good illustration of this, we're going to cut to the video, and it's going to be Babylon 5, which is very good in terms of its overall plot, because it posits that once humans get to this galactic level, a few hundred years from now, we encounter these alien beings, and we realize, my God, they are the beings of light from our myths. And they've been manipulating us at a much longer timescale than we are even aware of. And that's because they have left their mark in our unconscious, let's say. And as far as how deep the connection with the Orion beings goes, we'll get into that in just a moment. But now, give this example here, because in the Babylon 5 mythos, the Orion beings of light are the Vorlons. And you see, the Vorlons are interacting with the humans and other races at this Babylon 5 United Nations of Space level, but they're in mysterious encounter suits, okay? And they're hidden away. Their real nature is hidden because they can't reveal themselves because they'd be instantly recognized as the angels of ancient lore. And what they're doing is the same old thing that the forces of order are always doing, which is trying to arrange other races and puppeteer them to prepare for the battle against the forces of chaos, who periodically come back to harass, the good people in their endless struggle. And the whole question that's never been asked before in science fiction, but is asked and answered in Babylon 5, and this is why I ended up writing a whole book about Babylon 5, is how long should this cycle go on? How long do we have to be slaves of either order or chaos? How long do we have to choose between light and darkness in our expression of our ethics, our structure, our plot level? And the answer is we don't have to make the choice anymore. But in order to free ourselves, we have to be willing to confront the beings of light and darkness face to face and say, look, it's over. We don't need you anymore. And that's the whole point of the cosmic plot that the Babylon 5 is selling. But at this point anyway, things are still kind of hidden in Kosh, who is the Vorlon angelic ambassador, still hasn't revealed himself to anyone. However, he's about to be forced to do so because Captain Sheridan here, who is the human who's Kosh's main chess piece in his battle against the chaotic forces, he's about to be threatened by a random act of terrorism, okay? Forcing a hand of destiny to be played. Okay, but anyway, the manifestation here, what happens is Kosh is forced to reveal himself, and the way it affects the other alien races is the key, and then the conversation afterwards is also very key. Okay, here we see, this here is Delenn, who is the half human, half Minbar. Minbar are the kind of elf-like beings in Babylon 5 who are historically aligned with the Vorlons here. This is Kosh in his Vorlon suit. And so we see a similar Tolkien influence in the Babylon 5 mythology as well, in that they've always been here, and other alien races who are more or less at our level, i.e. created by these godlike cosmic forces, they will be interacting with us when it comes time for the apocalypse, because we could look at our own time as an apocalypse for our planetary level, but once we immediately step onto the galactic level, what we have to realize, and this is key, is that it's the apocalypse every day in deep space. Okay? Think about that. Our whole history, 26,000 years leading up to this tremendous, cosmically driven mission, all that leads up to the day of Alpha, the apocalypse day. And we think that all of our human struggles and successes have led us there. Wow, what an achievement, okay? It is an achievement, but great. We step out on Alpha Day, out into the big galaxy as the space gods, and we realize every day is merely what we just achieved. And every day you have to have that under your belt and use that as your understanding and be at that big, huge level where all of human history and everything we know is merely a stone in the pavement, and you're walking every day to unknown places. So, at that cosmic level anyway, humans and other races, of course, would tend to fall back on the protection again of these angelic or demonic forces, you see? So that's the point of the occult conspiracies of the angelic and demonic forces manipulating history. Cynics and critics also often say, oh, why would these big powerful beings manipulate our history? Well, because they know that we're growing and we're going to actually be on the galactic level at some point. And so if they interfere with our history now and manipulate us such that we believe in one of them or the other, then the end result is when we get out into the cosmos, of course, we're going to be dependent on them. So it's a whole insidious method of control. And that's the key that needs to be broken. But we'll get to that a little bit later. Right now we're just talking about the beings of light. Okay, back to the video now. So anyway, the elf-like beings here, represented by the quasi-goddess figure, are helping out the humans in their confrontation with the evil forces. So as we go back to the video.
Approaching Station 2. Please stand away.
Again, it's the idea that random terrorism is one of the only weapons the chaotic forces have when the ordered forces have themselves together. Okay? Think about that in terms of our own age. And there's a lot of, fear, multiplying the probability of how much terrorism can succeed, etc. So, it's very big. It's got to be big. Here you go, jump or die.
Computer, emergency override. Open shuttle doors.
They're in a vast space station, he's hundreds of feet up, of course.
Oh my god. Emergency alert. We've had an explosion in the core shuttle. We need rescue jetpacks and we need them now.
What are you trying to do?
He's more or less weightless, but the ground is rotating at 60 miles an hour. If we can't catch him, he'll be killed by the impact.
You won't have time.
Here we go. So, Kosh, the Vorlon, has to act.
Gosh, you know what is at stake. If you're going to do anything, you must do it now.
Now the key is every race sees a different being, but it's all the same being.
You've got 30 seconds. We can't do it.
Valeria. Trushala. Shalon.
Except this guy here, who's the evil shadow conspirator, because he's allied to the evil forces, he sees nothing. How can you not, if you encounter that face to face, how can you not think it's a heavenly messenger? Just by the fact that it's made of light. So the fact that something anatomically is light affects you psychologically. And they count on that effect. Oh, it flies, it's bright, made of light, it must be good. Not necessarily true. Because, as you see later on, once you start pissing off the Vorlons by not doing what they say, they're ready to kill you like a lab experiment.
Caution.
So, you gotta be careful. Just because they're angelic, the main thing is you must obey. And if you don't obey, then you will be destroyed. Just like the chaotic forces will destroy you. But, light is better than darkness, but the point is you shouldn't have to choose between them. Here's the key conversation now.
Yes.
I just wanted to see how you were doing.
Fine. The whole station is talking about what happened. Every race that was in the garden saw something different, yet the same. A being of light.
Yes. Each according to his or her type.
But it was Kosh, wasn't it? That's what he meant when he said that if he left his encounter suit, he'd be recognized by everybody.
For millions of years, the Volans have visited other worlds, guided them, and
manipulated us. Programmed us so that when we saw them, we would react the right way.
It is, as you say, a matter of perspective.
So that's the key, okay? We're cutting away from this clip now. But the key is that the Vorlons, by visiting us in the ancient past, and by being, by default, the fact that they're beings of light, whoever they are. I mean, the name Vorlons, again, is just an estimation, but so's the name angels, right? So's the name sons of light. So's whatever name you give to the winged characters of in Native America. So the idea is that these beings are around, and you know they're there, but you can't be too certain of who they are. And just because they claim to be certain things doesn't mean that they are. Okay, so with the beings of light, though, there's an interesting little tale that I have to narrate now. It's time for cosmic story time on this subject, okay? A little bit of cosmic storytelling. Back to our tales of the Ghost Capital, okay? Because in the Ghost Capital now, all these alien beings are interacting with humanity. But because it's more of a Babylon 5 type of political level, what it is, the Ghost Capital mirrors a democratic U.S.-style government. So there's an actually wing of the government that dedicated to the alien ambassadors. So representatives of different alien beings or races have each one has an embassy to the Ghost Capital. Because they're all, again, trying to manipulate us according to 2012, because other races are obviously very heavily invested in what we are going to do with our own evolutionary scheme. Because 2012 isn't just about our own apocalypse. Again, remember, with the Space God plot, it's about us emerging onto the galactic level. So it's all very key. Okay. So, Tsar Peter the Great, my man, is taking me around, and he's taking me into this alien embassy in the Ghost Capital, because at that time I had been interacting with the elves, okay, and the Ghost Capital itself is a four-dimensional astral plane structure built around this one building, the Great Library, which was created by the elves. The same astral plane world that the elves once ruled. Now that humanity's in charge of the planet, we rule that world. The elves only made one building, though, in the entire millions of years they were there. And it was a great library. So, anyway, how that then manifested as the Ghost Capital is what this little tale's about. And it has to do with the beings of light, the Orion beings of light. Because we got to remember that the Orion beings of light first, became interested in Earth at the request of Earth herself. Because the reptilian experiment went awry. Okay? Just a brief recap here. The Age of the Dinosaurs resulted in many more things than most people are going to find in a fossil record. One of the things it resulted in is intelligent humanoid-style velociraptor dinosaurs evolved as the assumed and probable planetary brain. That was the first experiment, let's say, in serious, not serious, but serious, or as in dedicated attempt at making a planetary brain on behalf of ISIS. However, it went awry because the reptilians decided to, become allied with these other dimensional chaotic beings, and this is who the Elder Gods are. Okay, the Elder Gods are these, beings that are so different from anything we would understand that you're driven insane if you even try to look at one of them. Okay, on the astral plane, if you think about them too much, your mind is twisted and destroyed. And so they have a chaotic. We'll get to them as well, but the reptilians for some reason decided to ally with these beings, and they went awry. And Isis couldn't deal with it, so she called in the beings of light, who were the ancient enemies of the space of the Elder Gods and the dark forces that the Elder Gods have spawned across the galaxy. Okay, the chaotic shadow forces. In the Babylon 5, they're represented as insectoid-type aliens, the shadows. But the Elder Gods really are who's what it's all about, and they are the pure chaotic, other-dimensional beings. And they make contact with darkly aligned lesser beings across, many worlds. And these lesser beings then, usually reptilian-based, end up serving the Elder Gods. One of their main servant races is from Draco. So the Elder Gods themselves are not from the star Draco. However, their main servant race, which is reptilian by nature, is from Draco. And this reptilian race is what the dinosaur reptile velociraptors of our ancient past made psychic telepathic contact with. Of course, the dinosaurs had no technology like we would understand it. But they did instead go with the other dimensional psychic telepathic development of their consciousness. So they bypass the whole technology and space travel and any of that and go directly from primeval existence into other dimensional expansions. And that's how they make contact with these other group of the shapeshifter reptilians. And they rule the Earth, and they're threatening to turn the Earth into just a other elder god, petri dish. And of course, Isis can't let that happen, so she calls in the cosmic police, who are the alien beings of light. So, as a result of that, Earth is then purified, and a new race begins to develop, and that's who the elves are. And the elves are developing in the kind of psychic ground created by the intersection of the Father, these beings of light representing a Father order, and the planet. So there's a natural love affair, let's say initially, between Isis and the Orion beings, resulting in the elves. Okay, and the elves, however, again aren't what the planet quite needs, because they're too good, too perfect, too much aligned to the beings of light. And Isis, I think, frankly, this is my opinion, of course, is suspicious of the agenda of the beings of light, the Orion light beings. She doesn't trust them, and maybe she shouldn't. Maybe it's like the Vorlons, again. No matter how good they are and how perfect and wonderful they are, perhaps ultimately they just want to control you because they can. Because in a hierarchy that trumps everything we know, maybe they are looking for status by being the good shepherds. Okay? Right? And so they don't want to let their prize flock go by having us evolve to their level. So they want to keep us down with the patriarchal control and the order, so that we're the perfect children, but not adults, you see. And that's the key with these beings of light, why Isis doesn't trust them, and I don't think she should. So, the natural allegiance that Isis then makes is with the beings from Sirius. And this happens after the elf civilization kind of peters out and fades out. And I think that the Sirius aliens, Isis makes other dimensional contact with them herself, and there's a whole kind of collaboration which then is intrinsically tied up with the space gods, because we got to remember that the human race is overseen and kind of tutored by the Sirius intelligences. All right, in an occult contact plot level, many occult Sirius contacts, synchronicitous contacts. We'll get into that, but the point is that the Sirius contact seems to be a partnership with Isis. And Isis's own true agenda seems to be served by whatever is represented to us as the Sirius intelligence. And so it is partnered in a way with the beings of light, but in a not quite trusting them fashion. All right. So those are, again, the three main factions. We'll get into more detail. But anyway, so in the Ghost Capital, the apocalyptic countdown showdown place, these alien beings are reduced to the level of just sending ambassadors to try to influence us, because it really represents us at a level where we're going to be stepping up to their plane. And so they can't intimidate us the way they could before, just by showing up in the desert with a big special effect, like you just saw with Kosh saving Sheridan's life there. That's not good enough anymore. Anybody's can get a bag of tricks. So we really need to look at things independently and have these old alliances re-examined. Okay. So anyway, now, just to get back to the story time quickly. All right, I'm asking now, Peter the Great and I are walking through the halls of the Ghost Capital, the actual Capitol building itself, inside the capital city, okay? Okay, Colonel Burr, Aaron Burr, is also with us, right? Okay, we descended and ascended a series of steps, passing several rooms of mysterious purpose, ultimately emerged in what I instantly recognized was the representative assembly that correlates to the House of the House of Representatives in the real earthly capital. The chamber was occupied, as the Tsar had previously told me, with delegates from alien worlds, both extraterrestrial and other dimensional. I'll find the ambassador, meaning the Orion ambassador, who we're there to see, Burr said as he disappeared into the aisles. How many different alien species are represented here? I asked Peter as we looked down from over the densely populated chamber. I didn't recognize any of them and could not really describe their features now with any degree of accuracy. Most of these are small-time players from parallel dimensions or minor alien worlds that have only recently discovered our own, Peter told me. There are only 3 permanent embassies here from the main races of aliens that have been involved with Earth for millions of years. Sirius, Orion, and Draco, I said. So again, it's even reflected in the Ghost Capital. The 3 main players who have interacted with us are on a much larger scale and are controlling most of what we are going to interact with on the galactic level. Everything else, the small-time aliens who may be visiting us on a flyby or a joyride or an accident, they're, again, on our level and not really relevant to us in a bigger picture. Okay, yes, came a reply from behind us. I turned to behold a dazzling sight. A tall figure dressed in white, with a head made of pure light, burning brightly like a small star. The creature's robes glowed with an ambient golden hue. If my eyes had been of flesh, I would have had to look away. Standing next to this being, the normally impressive Colonel Burr looked small, insubstantial, almost irrelevant by comparison. Allow me to introduce the Archangel Gabriel, Burr said, ambassador to Earth from the Orion Chorus. So the Orion government is called a chorus, like a singing chorus. What do you say to an angel? I thought to myself. Hello seemed grossly inadequate, but I mumbled it anyway in an awed tone. Gabriel nodded his head and held out his hands. You are being invited to witness with a capital W, the Tsar whispered into my ear. It would be wise to accept. I reached out and clasped the glowing white hands. Suddenly the room fell away and we were rising high into the ether. I looked down below and saw the ghost capital grow smaller and smaller until it was but a circle of light in the center of the vast island known as the Land of the Dead, floating in the midst of an infinite chaotic sea. Do not be afraid, Gabriel's words rang through my head. Let me show you how it began. We flew back down towards the island in a looping spiral. As we moved, I could see changes occurring on the surface. I noted that our motion was counterclockwise, and I guessed the truth, Gabriel reading my mind in confirmation. Yes, we are moving back in time, the angelic voice said. Back to before humans spoke and knew the ways of light or darkness, to when my people's first children, the elves, ruled the earth and its soul, the land of the dead. The area that I have come to know as the Ghost Capital was in this time very different. As with the current manifestation, the great Illuminati eye hovered above, but unlike the present, the eye was closed. Directly under this massive apparition, only one large building could be seen, located in the exact center of the city area. We came down to rest on top of this structure, which was cubical and vaguely familiar. Below, hundreds of elves could be seen moving through the amazingly beautiful gardens. Now, one thing to note about the eye. Why, at the time of the elves, would the eye of the Illuminati, which during our time is open and observing all, why would that eye be there but closed during the time of the elves? Answer. It's the eye of the ISIS collective consciousness, okay? And at that time it's asleep because ISIS put it to sleep. Why? Because the elves bored her to sleep. Sounds tragic and a bit absurd, but 1,000,000 years of elven culture just lulled the planet completely to sleep, and the big eye just closed, okay? And it didn't open up again until it started to interact with the aliens from Sirius. And this is, right before the space gods will arrive. So maybe 100,000 years ago, ISIS begins to interact with the aliens from Sirius. Up until that point, the eye was asleep, hypnotized into unconsciousness by an overdose of perfection. That's a key point, because so many people just want to try to sell you the idea that perfection and light and wonderful order is what it's all about. And then that's only half the picture at best. Okay? So anyway, at this point, almost in defense against the extraordinary beauty of the scene, I decided to quiz Gabriel about something that haunted me from the previous night. Is your Lord Yahweh really threatening to send a meteor to kill us for our sins? I asked delicately. Moses was ranting about such a scenario to the Congress. That is not something I can tell you, Gabriel replied. I have no business with Yahweh or any other god of humanity. What? I said, but you are the Lord's messenger, are you not? Yes, I am, in one sense. I have stirred many prophets with the voice of the Lord. However, the voice did not come through me. Rather, it came because of me. What do you mean? I asked. It is why I have brought you here, the angel said with a sweeping motion indicating the elven city below. We beings of light have always been here ready to inspire, but never to interfere. We are holding a lantern in the dark, ready to show you what lies beyond, but we are servants of no Lord named by man. Aten, Yahweh, Jehovah, Allah, these are entities born of humanity, seated by the light which we bring. So the act, I said, of bringing the message of the Lord is what creates the Lord? Is that what you are saying? I tried to be respectful in my tone as I wrestled with these concepts. Our presence is the stone thrown into the pool of human consciousness, and the lords of light are the ripples. And the ghost capital, I ask, why did it evolve? What is its origin? The elves built the great library on which we now stand in an attempt to capture the light and store it for all future generations. The eye of providence was born as a result, the eye of illumination, which was opened much later. And so, now the idea is that, this goes on and on. The idea is that the elves, had these contacts with these spiritual beings of light. And this is formed a pattern for humanity's interaction monotheistically. But it's not going to come into play for humanity until later, prior to the Genesis point. So, during the age of Pisces, essentially. And so these alien beings of light really don't have much to do with human history until late in the game. And really, before that, it's about the beings from Sirius. Okay, Sirius beings are the ones that are manipulating us. And so now, to go for the next video clip in my ranting, moving on now to about the Sirius question. Okay? I'm going to go for some Robert Anton Wilson. He's going to talk briefly about his interactions with what were assumed to be the Sirius intelligences. Because everybody from Blavatsky and the Theosophists to the Egyptian priesthood to the different characters in the New Age circles to, many other characters, Wilson among them, and myself among them, have had interactions with these so-called Sirius beings. And what has happened is that the Sirius connection appears to be a pervasive theme with, unexplained synchronicities always attached to it. Okay, so here we go. Now we see there the main synchronicity matrix associated with Sirius, which is the Great Pyramid, the Sirius shaft connection, the number 23, which synchronicities relating to Sirius follow a pattern of the number 23 appearing. Happened with me. Wilson documents it in Cosmic Trigger. Other people, Timothy Leary, Philip K. Dick, etc., also had this strange experience of, for whatever reason, you begin to feel you're in contact with an alien intelligence from Sirius. At the same time, the number 23 begins to appear for you in synchronicities that are shocking, inexplicable, and beyond any rational alternative explanation. And so it appears, the reason for this now is that the beings from Sirius are 5-dimensional, and they are like masters of the Matrix, and they can manipulate reality and send us these messages just like the gnomes do. And what's implied almost is that by imitating them and learning how to be like them, the Sirius beings, we gain more of that power because it's actually part of our evolutionary birthright. Because our particular program, who Homo sapiens humans are, is a result of the interaction between Isis and the Sirius beings. And here's the key. This is the key. Wow. Wow! This has never been even thought by me before, but it's totally true. Get this. Why is it, okay, let's pause for a second here. Why is it with the Space Gods plot, okay, humans going back in time to become our own creators? Why is that plot seemingly nonlinear? And why does it seem to focus on a multiple scenario of many options? And it has a strange, twisted, non-linear, hyperdimensional effect, resulting in us becoming hyperdimensional beings once we fully understand it. Why? Because it's a result of the Earth's exposure to the Sirius beings and the Sirius intelligence, which is 5-dimensional. That's why the 5-pointed star is represented as Sirius. And the 7-pointed star represents man's ascent to Sirius. Okay? And that is, again, the symbolism involved in all that is very esoteric, and I could go on explaining about it forever. But the idea then is that the Sirius beings have taught us how to be hyperdimensional. And alchemy is revealed as another method for us, having been passed on by the Sirius cult, the Isis cult of ancient Egypt. ISIS cult, Sirius cult, Calendar of Light, Masonic, Freemasonic, Knights Templar, Rosicrucians, conspiracies, all of them tied up with this Sirius intelligence, the Illuminati. So anyway, back to the video now. But my point is to be well considered that Sirius is pretty serious, and I'll be getting into more of my own contacts with it. Were again strange cosmic beings claiming to be the gods of ancient Egypt, and it's associated with cults of ancient Egypt who said they were from Sirius, and interacted with my friends and I during the New Cosmic Cult days. And we had never read anything about any of this, studied no occultism, even though Wilson's experiences happened in 1974. Coincidentally, at the exact same time in 1974 as Wilson's having contact with Sirian beings, Timothy Leary and Philip K. Dick are both independently receiving the same messages from Sirius. At the same time, 3 different guys who all know each other but weren't talking about it or communicating about it, who all have similar mindsets and seem to be decoding the same puzzle. At the same time, in 1973 to 74, they begin to have these Sirius contacts at the exact same way, the exact same messages delivered, just slightly different because of their personalities. Vastly different results, of course. But again, it's the synchronicity element. So Sirians and the Sirius connection always have synchronicities accompanying them because they're intrinsically 5-dimensional, and a synchronicity is a 5-dimensional stamp, or a higher dimensional stamp, on the matrix of what you're viewing. So it's almost like the Sirians were here when you see that synchronicity.
Yeah, the name Are You Serious comes from directly from Robert Anton Wilson, actually, the book Cosmic Trigger, in which he goes into the Sirius mysteries. It's also, one of...
This guy here, Are You Serious, is his name. He represents one of the levels of the cultists who were created by Wilson publishing this book. Cosmic Trigger is the book here, talking about the Sirius experiences.
Great books for
it was a key book for me.
Raising your level of clarity and intelligence and psychedelic humor and everything you could possibly want from a book. Cosmic Trigger was the mother-lode.
Those of you who have read my book Cosmic Trigger know, a lot of you. Hey, that's very flattering. You all know what happened on July 23rd, 1973. That was the day I achieved contact with an extraterrestrial from Sirius, or started hallucinating like mad, depending on which way you want to look at it. I have varied between both theories over the years, but I just found out recently, since I'm a student of synchronicity, this one really struck me. July 23rd, 1973 was also the birthday of Monica Lewinsky.
Around 1973, I became convinced for a while that I was receiving messages from outer space. But then a psychic reader told me I was actually channeling an ancient Chinese philosopher, and another psychic reader told me I was channeling a medieval Irish bard. And at that time, I started reading neurology, and I decided it was just my right brain talking to my left brain. And then I went to Ireland, and I found out it was actually a 6-foot-tall white rabbit. They call it the puka, and the Irish know all about it. So it depends on who I'm talking to, which of these metaphors I use to explain where these weird patterns come from that jump out of the books and take hold of the readers and change their lives. It's not me. It's a 6-foot-tall white rabbit from County Kerry.
Okay, so the idea there is that, again, with the Vallée structure, I'll give an aside on this. Wilson's a good friend of Jacques Vallée, the UFO researcher that's the one to read. Messengers of Deception and the UFO Chronicles we'll talk about. But the idea is that the alien encounter that you're going to have, when it's happening, it's presented as an alien encounter. But it could also be something else impersonating an alien. It could also be part of yourself interacting with you objectively. And the thing is, too, and here's a very suspicious thing, this happened to me. Having genuine contact with other dimensional or extraterrestrial intelligences in a channeling scenario, okay, resulted in my brain being mutated. And Wilson talks all about brain mutation as one of his main researches. And as a result, my brain would then, given certain circumstances, manufacture, I guess you could call them fake intelligences, which would be objective to me, but would be created by my unconscious mind. Okay? It sounds wild. To interact with or to accomplish certain things that my unconscious mind, by the contact with another intelligence. See, because what it is, unless you're going up in a spaceship, the most likely way you're going to contact a genuine alien intelligence is going to be through a channeling or psychic contact scenario. And what they're going to do is they're going to contact your mind. However, your conscious brain, your collective conscious program is in the way, let's say, and needs to be set aside in some fashion, and needs to be dealt with by them. So it's going to assume a plot level or a mask that will conveniently get your conscious mind out of the way for them, long enough for them to convey the message. And so in your mutation of your consciousness, this process of altering the brain change, becomes almost a habitual default mechanism that can be triggered automatically later by completely random factors. Almost like how Vietnam vets have the post-traumatic stress where you're used to gunfire and you have horrible memories, so years later a car backfires and suddenly you're in the Nam again, right? And the idea is that the contact with alien beings can be triggered by the brain. And so also now, when he makes the reference to the puka, it's key because he's also saying, as Valet points out, that the same brain mechanism that happens that allows him to contact a potential alien from Sirius, or for me to contact an alien other dimensional creature, or even myself in the future, that same mechanism is in play when you contact other dimensional fairy type beings. When you enter the fairy realm, that part of your brain mechanism is turned on, and so your consciousness is able to enter that realm. And it has a lot to do with the similarities between all alternate four-dimensional consciousness frameworks. In other words, they're all similar and they bleed into one another, and it depends on your own plot level which one you end up in. But if you get into the meta-programming mechanism, you can choose which one. And that's the interesting question. Could I actually choose to change the appearance of Mr. Gray when he appears to me? Could, with my imagination and will and my meta-programming, could I alter it? Is the gray outfit he gives created by my unconscious expectation and collaboration? And if so, can I take conscious control of that process? And if so, then can I manipulate him and how he appears to me? I think I can. But that's a level of mechanism we don't want to talk about with UFOs. Okay, back to Wilson here. We're almost off this clip. Okay?
Well, looking back, I accept that metaphor as pretty accurate. All writers are channelers in some sense. Faulkner talked about the demon that dictated his books to him. Norman Mailer talks about the navigator in the unconscious. William Blake said the prophets Ezekiel and Isaiah dictated his poetic, prophetic books to him. Most artists traditionally have talked about the muse. And for people in County Kerry, it's a 6-foot-tall white rabbit. For me, it was an extraterrestrial from Sirius. There are different metaphors for the experience.
And the key is...
Philip K. Dick and I had a series of rather similar experiences.
Now, Philip K. Dick, he's referring here as well, was big for me and is big for many people because he as well is a writer who had a nervous breakdown and his mind began to mutate. And he was psychically, he thought, in contact with alien intelligence from Sirius. Now, here is a key point, too, and we'll get into this with our next video clip, is that Philip K. Dick, in his madness, or was it madness, felt that he was being thrown into a dual perception where it was revealed to him that reality as we perceive it is actually completely false, completely fake. It's a hallucination being beamed into our brains by a satellite that's being controlled by the government, the Illuminati, whoever. And that they're trying to make us think that it's really 1974 in that case. But really, it's actually the first century, or farther back in history. And humans at that time, Gnostic humans, have discovered how to break out of linear time through contact with the Sirius beings, right? And so the Romans, who are allied with the allied order beings, okay, they have to stomp out the Gnostics because the Romans are going to take over Christianity according to the Beings of Light program, okay? So humans can't be developing other dimensionally ahead of schedule in the age of Pisces, right? With the Gnostic Christians, and they are Abraxas, all hail Abraxas, is the god of the Gnostics, god of gods, and that represents the unleashed five-dimensional human Hyperman, who the Sirius beings are trying to help us evolve into. Okay? And so anyway, the Gnostics, through interactions with the Sirius beings, thanks to the Egyptian cults, stumble on things too quickly, and the Romans suppress them. And so what Philip K. Dick realizes is that this suppression psychically of these Gnostics had broken out of three-dimensional reality already, almost. They were making the prison break, what Dick calls the black iron prison, okay? And so the Romans had to grab them, kill them, and enslave them. And Dick believed that he himself was one of these Gnostic Christians, and that it really wasn't 1974, and that it really was 17 AD or something, or 50 AD or something. He was actually being part of this mind. They couldn't kill him. They killed his body, but they couldn't destroy his mind, so they trapped him. And these Sirius beings were liberating him. Of course, is he in 1974 really going insane? And he's encountering all the cosmic plot level? Maybe so, but what's interesting is at the same time that this is happening to Dick, it's happening to Wilson, it's happening to Timothy Leary. Timothy Leary is locked in prison at this point, Folsom Prison, incommunicado, no contact with the outside world. And he's receiving alien transmissions from Sirius with his telepathic practices. Timothy Leary, the LSD guru, took so much LSD, he developed telepathy, okay? And him and his cult, who are locked in the prison in California, make contact with these alien Syrians who give him the starseed transmissions and are about the whole Sirius connection and manipulation history. And at the same time, Wilson is following up, having the Sirius contacts, but for him, he's researching it from the angle of the occult, from Theosophy, the Illuminati, Freemasonry, and that angle of it. So you have the different angles. You have Philip K. Dick with his other dimensional Christian beings of order suppression plot. You have Leary with his signals coming from Sirius received by telepaths on Earth. And then you have Wilson with his tracing the occult formulae of the Freemasons and recreating their magical experiments, resulting in his contacts with the Sirius beings. But one more thing about Dick is, and this is key, that his interaction with the Sirius beings also interfered with experiments going on in the Soviet Union, with the Soviet Union's current interaction with these beings of light, Orion beings of light, okay? Because Dick, supposedly, the Soviets had telepaths and this whole black project, let's say, grouping, working supposedly with alien beings from Orion, the order beings from Orion, and that Dick, with his Sirius contacts, somehow interfered with that, and the KGB were after him in a whole paranoid plot. But it's curious because we'll find out in a few minutes that we later find out from a mysterious DVD, which may or may not even have existed in reality until it was delivered by Synchronicity Forces. Supposedly the KGB did go to Egypt in the 1960s, did dig up an alien being claiming to be from Orion who goes back to 10,500 BC, and did have a whole conspiracy plot just like Philip K. Dick had psychically been envisioning in the 1970s, yet nobody in the 1970s in the West knew anything about it, certainly not Philip K. Dick. So again, who's the causal agent there? Synchronicity again. How can a madman supposedly hallucinating know things which turn out to be true, or which turn out to be going on secretly, yet there's no causal connection, yet that there is a connective link? All of these different things I just described, and there are many, many, many more, all have the Sirius connection in common. That's the link. And you'll find at the bottom of many, many things in history this occult link back to Sirius, the all-seeing eye, etc. Why? Because, again, the Sirius beings are five-dimensional, beyond linear time. They are interacting with all of our history at once. And so they see things in a very different way. And so for us, looking at it, it looks like they've been behind manipulations of human history forever. Well, they have, because forever is just our way of looking at linear time. And so, of course, they're talking to all these people simultaneously. But back to the video just briefly.
And out of his experiences, he constructed to Alice, which looks like a science fiction story most of the way. And then abruptly at the end, you suddenly find out maybe it's not a science fiction story. Maybe it's an account of Philip K. Dick going crazy. Or maybe it's an account of Philip K. Dick being contacted by extraterrestrials. Well, the Cosmic Trigger has pretty much the same structure. So that Robert Anton Wilson being contacted by extraterrestrials. No, it's Robert Anton Wilson going crazy. No, it's just Robert Anton Wilson experimenting with alternative realities and coming out of Chapel Perilous at the end without believing in any of them. The structures are very similar because they were based on very similar experiences. I woke up after doing
And see,
ritual.
now, it's interesting here, the Chapel Perilous thing, which he talks about, and I'll search through this just to the next point. It is, Chapel Perilous is the psychic condition you enter when you begin to interact with the serious beings. They begin to change your whole way of looking at things, and synchronicities begin to occur initially. Here it is. Initially, they begin to occur in a way that it's hard to explain, hard to deny, and again, because these beings are other dimensional, they're waking you up through the psychic connection. They're waking you up. They're shocking you, let's say. And when you look and you follow the synchronicity trail of the number 23, how it comes up and coincides with Sirius in strange ways that you can't really explain, it is a shock again, and it's a transformation of your consciousness. And that's what the whole role of the Sirius beings is, to transform our consciousness. Okay, back to the video.
Chapel Perilous is a stage in the magical quest in which your maps turned out to be totally inadequate for the territory, and you're completely lost. And at that point, you get an ally who helps you find your way back to something you can understand. And then after that, you've got for the rest of your life, you got this question, was that ally a supernatural helper, or was it just part of my own mind trying to save me from going totally bonkers with this stuff? And the people I know who've had that kind of experience, very few of them have ever come to an absolutely certain conclusion about that. The puka plays the same role as the holy guardian angel in Kabbalistic magic, or the extraterrestrial in the Whitley Strieber type experience, or the ghosts of dead relatives speaking through a seance in 19th century spiritualism, or Ramtha speaking through Jay-Z night. These are all different metaphors for basically the same experience.
So there we see the idea that all the different contacts that you have with this serious intelligence are going to affect you in different ways, and you're going to break it down according to your own plot level. And plot level is the thing to keep into consideration there. And the problem that we often face when we're dealing with the alien question is how to put plot level into context. And how to put into context our interactions with claims of the extraordinary, fantastic, and certainly unbelievable. Okay? And the idea then is that we have to look at things very carefully and not be fooled by appearances. And so, what I want to just emphasize here, and I'm actually going to, wrap it up here and continue in a further session, okay? Because I have to really, I want to consider a few things. With the Sirius connection, let's focus right now on the Sirius connection just for a moment. We have to remember that the essential doubt, let's say, that we have to have about these things, we have to be careful. We can't, that's why we could call it Wilsonian doubt, his doubt of, no matter how convincing the synchronicity is, and no matter how helpful the being is, and no matter how pervasive the plot level seems to be reinforced, we still have to be careful about just believing and accepting anything. Because, obviously it's not a good idea to give up your responsibility, but even more now, the application of that principle of doubt by me is in terms of our role apocalyptically handing off the program to the space gods and defining the program. Because I don't really have to care, ultimately, that if I trace back human history and look back at the program and see the serious connection everywhere, I don't really have to feel indebted or to bow down to something I would consider to be the serious intelligence, despite all that. Why? Because the serious intelligence is what it is, independent of anything I'm going to say. And so it's a principle here, and this is key, okay? It's a principle of when you don't have anything meaningful to say, first thing you do is you don't say something stupid. That shows you're, able to exercise silence. You're not going to immediately speak out of fear or dogma or programming. But then the next thing you say has to be also an expression of your position. And so if I'm confronted by an alien being, I'm not going to be spouting out any of the expected reactions. But I'm also not going to play up its magnificence too much either. Because that's the last trick that they have in their bag right now. Okay? Because of the Babylon 5 factor, the dethroning of the ancient, awe, we're in a position where we actually have the power and we shouldn't give it up so easily. And so the Wilsonian doubt of could just be my brain talking to me, could just be, a psychological, psychic, magical effect that's real, external, yet isn't independent of me and can't be controlled and really shouldn't be considered beyond the delivery. I.e., going back to Whitley Strieber's thing of all that matters is what I'm about to show you. So, keeping these things in mind for me. The serious connection, however, is very powerful and needs to be used in the conveying of the law to balance the plot level with the Orion, Draco, light and dark. Because even the Babylon 5 doesn't have the third level of conspiratorial help. In other words, even in serious scenarios where they're talked about as if they're either light or dark beings, right? They're not truly understood in their higher dimensional nature yet. Even by an expert like Wilson or somebody who, as well as following their trail, they don't get it yet about the neutrality and the five-dimensional simultaneity of the Syrians. That's why they're pervasive throughout human culture. And that's why it's the five-pointed star. And it has nothing to do with them being really good or bad or any of the type of things that, it's understandable because you have to look at the beings of light and darkness in terms of good and bad, helpful or not, scary or not, beautiful or not, The Syrians are not anything like that, and that's why they're so enigmatic and pervasive and people don't know what to do with them. But the Syrians also don't care as long as they're being thought about, their mission's being accomplished either way, even if we think the wrong thing. The fact that we're thinking about them accomplishes their mission. But there's a higher level, a more pure and direct level of interaction with them, which has yet to be tapped into, even by me at my level when I was interacting with them, or beings associated and claiming to be them. Still, it was on are you going to help me or not? Are you scary or not? Are you funny or not? It was a dichotomy level, limited by plot level, as if they're either going to be beings of light or darkness, and that's all they could possibly be. So we have to look at even how, with aliens and UFOs, our contact with them, so determined by plot level that we almost have no function of reality with them. We have only a script function. In other words, an alien being appears, you enact the script, you're scared or not, you're awed, you bow down, you get the message, And so it could be anything, and there's really it might as well be a fantasy of your unconscious, because your reaction and interaction with it is so superficial and so programmed. Which is why my interactions with the dwarves have set a new bar, and I'll close on this. Again, I'll close on why I'm the man. Because my interactions have set a new bar for equality and face-to-face realism in the interaction with cosmic forces. And when I convey that in the Mysteries with the Little People book, it'll be shockingly clear exactly how much I have raised the bar. So in the next dialogue, I'll start with the Draco Elder God connection, which is much more involved and needs more explanation. And then I'll wrap it up with my general dissertation on the UFO cults, per se. But for now, serious business means multidimensional concerns and not falling for the obvious dichotomies. And it's so hard to do that. And as cosmic context is important, so is, let's say, purity of perception. We'll leave on that thought and just reiterate once more that I love you.
I love you.